Hello new warriors! In this video, for you beginners out there, I'm going to show you how to utilize anti-airs in Street Fighter 6. So all that being said, if you want to see more educational content down the road, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's go straight into each category of anti-airs. Now, the first category of anti-airs are known as anti-air specials, and these come in the form of moves that typically have some form of invincibility on startup. Dragon Punch, for example, is a very commonly known anti-air, and so Luke, Ryu, Ken, Cammy, Jamie, and a variety of other characters typically have a nice invincible anti-air that they can use to capitalize. So in this example here, I'm going to show you Cammy as she jumps in. That right there is a nice smooth DP. Now, the reason why this is effective as an anti-air is because it covers you in a lot of ways. For the most part, it is invincible, so therefore you don't have to really worry too much about getting hit unless you mistime your anti-air itself. Now, when it comes to overall anti-airs in general, it's really all about your spacing. But most importantly, it's all about predicting the enemy and knowing when they want to jump in. Normally, enemies want to jump in when you're getting too close to them, right? So the moment you start to walk forward, the enemy is typically going to have a habit of wanting to jump because they know that you're coming in close for pressure. So the moment you see that, position yourself just about this range to where if they do jump in, just about here, you can just capitalize. Just like that, right? So it's all about your spacing. And the moment you capitalize on your spacing, you can punish them accordingly. It will take some time and practice, but just make sure that you're predicting. The worst thing you want to do when you're anti-airing is guessing. Because the more you guess what the enemy is going to do, it's going to cause you more problems down the road because you're not really knowing your proper spacing. And spacing is so critical when it comes to capitalizing on consistent anti-airs. So you want to be just about here, right? You want to be at a range where, again, you're comfortable enough to where if you can see the enemy jump, you can immediately react and respond. And again, like I said, typically most players who want to jump in, their habit is they see you walking forward and they get scared. And the moment they get scared, you walk back and you capitalize. And that's an anti-air special. So next we're going to go into a simpler form, which are AntiAir Normals. Now before I expand upon AntiAir Normals, I wanted to kind of go back just for a second to talk about AntiAir Specials. Now, not every character in the game is going to have a special that is invulnerable on its startup to therefore utilize as an anti-air. In the case of Manon, for example, her anti-air can be used effectively if you predict accordingly and you space yourself. However, you can get stuffed out of it because it does not have any vulnerability on startup, which means you have to be a little bit more mindful as to when you use it. But when you do use it, you can get a lot of great mileage out of it. So all that being said, let's now go into anti-air normals. So anti-air normals are a lot easier in the sense that they require less input when compared to anti-air specials. So we'll use the same example as Manon because Manon is one of the more, I would say, efficient users of anti-airs in the game. She has a lot of ways to anti her opponent. She has crouching fierce here. As you saw earlier, she does have her quarter circle forward kick motion. So she's got quite a bit of options. She also has back medium kick as well, if you can time it correctly. So let's take a look. Very, very fast, right? All these moves work. So right then and there, that's an example of a anti-air normal. And the reason why, again, these are really good for beginners is because they require less input and less, I would say, brain time. Because as a new player coming into a fighting game, motions are going to be one of your culprits, one of your banes of existence. And so when you're trying to learn something for the first time, it's good to start off simple and I think AntiAir Normals are a really great way to start off. And like I said, Manon is a really good example of this because her normals are really, really effective to capitalize for anti-airs. And so whenever you see the enemy wanting to jump in, once again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about your spacing, once you start to walk forward, just keep an eye out on how the enemy responds and just predict and put yourself in the right spacing to where you can capitalize and go for an anti-air. It's that simple. Of course, it takes time and practice, so I recommend going into training mode and practicing your anti-airs. But of course, I also think that going into an actual real-life battle scenario will help you to remove and release all that anxiety and tension. And as you start to play more real players, you'll likely figure things out for your own respective characters, and you'll build confidence from there. So just to reiterate, once again, AntiAir Normals are just simply moves that require less input, but still can make good use and capitalize off of anti-airs. So make good use of this. If you're not able to necessarily use a Shoryuken motion or a Corsical forward motion, then utilize your AntiAir Normals to maximize profits. Next, we're going to go into anti-air projectiles. So the beauty of anti-air projectiles, in the case of Guile for example, is that you the player are relying more on the projectile and your proper spacing to capitalize on the enemy doing bad things. Most importantly, those bad things being jumping in, because the whole point of a zoner is to conditioning you to either jump in or drive parry or just do things that typically you're not comfortable doing, but you're doing it because you want to close the gap. So Guile really is strong in this sense, as well as other zoners, but Guile most importantly because again, he has a variety of tools that he can use. Just throwing out sonic booms is really, really effective because again, it just forces the enemy to react to something, and that gives you a chance to see what their patterns are and therefore capitalize. So let's take a look here. So if you jump in, now I got cooked there, but let's say you don't get cooked, you can anti-air right there, right? See? So do you see what I'm doing here? I'm backing away a little bit. I back away. I know you're going to jump. Anti-air. So I stay right here. I see you jump. Boom. So you want to make sure you're not really trading too much, right? You don't want to trade yourself too often. Because if you do trade, it can kill you if you're not careful. So try and make sure that you optimize your spacing, but therefore always maximize on your anti-airs. So you see how I'm always in a position to where I'm walking forward, but then I walk back to bait the enemy into thinking I'm going to keep going forward. And then when I walk back, I proceed to throw a fireball or a sonic boom in this case. Now this can also work for the likes of Ken and Ryu, as they also have projectiles. Even Luke works as well. So just keep that in mind. Remember, the whole aspect of playing zoning is to use your fireballs as weapons, essentially. So whenever you see the opponent getting antsy, they have a tendency to jump in more than they should, then again, space yourself correctly to where you know if they jump in, you can use your sonic boom and you can capitalize on their jump ins and just rinse and repeat until they just stop jumping in, pretty much, if they do. So that being said, I want to repeat again, anti-air projectiles are very special in that you don't necessarily have to be in the opponent's face or putting yourself too close. You can always be at a range because you are zoning the opponent, and just properly position yourself to where you know you walk forward, and if they walk forward, you walk back and you proceed to throw your projectile in hopes that they will fall onto your fireball. So let's move on to the last and final point. This brings us to the final anti-airs, which are anti-air supers. Now, trying to incorporate all of these anti-airs into your game will likely take some time, so don't rush. As I mentioned earlier in the video, try your best to keep things simple. Start off with simple motion anti-airs, and then slowly progress towards your more advanced anti-air properties. Now, in the case of anti-air supers, these are where things get a little bit more spicy, and of course, there's more damage in them because you, the player, are now relying on meter versus your other respective anti-airs, which don't really require that much meter, if not any. So I'll use Ryu for example. Ryu's anti-air super is really good as it does a massive amount of damage and you can just cook somebody if they get too impatient. So you can just face yourself here and again, don't get cooked. It's gonna take some time. So just like that. Now, of course, that was a bit too early, but if you time it well enough. Just like that. So you can get a massive amount of damage. That's a huge punish for just jumping in, right? So again, like I said, this will take more time because you're doing more inputs. And as a new player, this is likely going to be your most challenging because doing a super for an anti-air is going to require more reaction time, but most notably, it's going to require more inputs from you. So you have to be very, very fast to react and very, very fast to immediately input the motion, not once, but twice, because normally specials or supers in any game of Street Fighter are going to require you to do not just one motion, but require you to do two at the same time, right? Very, very fast. So two of the same motions in tandem will take some time. And so doing that on a predictable jump in is not going to be easy. You saw just now how I got stuffed several times in practice. So it's not going to be something you can just immediately do, right? It will take some time. But when you get it, it's very, very satisfying. So my best advice here, if you really, really, really want to style on somebody, if you really want to send a message home to say, okay, you know what, stop jumping in or else you're going to pay dearly, then you can try and master AntiAir Specials. Like I said, it will require a lot more of your practice and concentration, but I assure you, your opponent is going to feel it and they're probably not going to want to jump in anymore. So all that being said, I hope this quick little how-to anti-air guide has helped you and given you some insight. If you want to see more educational content like this down the road, then of course, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, New Warriors. I'll see you folks on the next one. Take care, and as always, stay strong and keep fighting.